one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me was growing up poor, because it's really driven both of us. He's very driven. He's very successful in his line of work as well.
I got it from mostly from like a coding, because sometimes you are having a bug, and if you don't solve it, there is no one to solve it. So
Right.
you will sleep or maybe spend like a week off the computer, and when you just like go back, there is still the bug. So if you don't fix it, no one will do. So
That's right.
the native PHP product, which is currently PHP framework for building desktop and mobile application. It's currently you are a co-founder in this project.
But when I was just a baby, I remember him going out for like 10 months at a time on a submarine. And there's a story that he has. He was the computer programmer. Like nobody, like not everybody knew anything about computers. The computers are very new back then. They couldn't move because of the computer. And he stayed up for 5 days straight and worked on this problem. And he got an award for this, because he technically saved everybody's life. Long time. It took me months at least, you know, and then that was just to like wrap my head around the concept, let alone be profitable or be an asset to a company or an individual. This is my favorite thing to talk about these days. So thank you for that. Yeah, there's an app for that. This is our logo. Number one, it's, you know, the binaries are going to be way too big. No one wants to download a gig for an app, right? It's going to have to run a server. It's going to overheat the battery. It's going to, the processor. The battery's going to drain really fast, and the app stores aren't even going to allow it. So no, unfortunately, I don't think it's actually possible. He's like, I got mobile working. I was like, what? No way. Like, I just like shot through the roof with excitement, and I was like, no friggin' way. Like, I just very, very, very excited about it. And at one point he was like, hey, are you like building the Android thing? And I was like, uh-huh. And he's like, are you trying to, right? He's like, are you going to compete with me? Or I was like, no, I want to contribute. I want to help. I want to, you know.
Welcome, guys, to the Let's Code podcast, a podcast which interviews software engineer to share their entrepreneurial story. And here we are on EP number 12 of season number 2 of the podcast. And we have Sean from Native PHP. He had got his degree in information technology at Beaver River Central School. Also, he have been senior developer at a couple of companies, including 11 Church, Fast Growing Tree, and Pfizer. He have been working full-time as a Laravel developer since 2013. He is flying plane for fun, and he's entrepreneur. So let's dive into Sean's story after this quick intro. So thank you, Sean, for spending the time with us this afternoon. Can you give the audience more insights about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of sums it up. I spend a lot of time focused on work. People call it work. I love what I do. So I think the saying is, if you like what you do, you never work a day in your life. I think outside of that, I have a lot of interests, hobbies. I've got a son who's almost 16 and acts like he's almost 16, and that keeps me pretty busy. He's also active in like the Boy Scouts, and so I'm actually going in a couple of weeks to a summer camp with him for a week, which would be kind of fun to unplug a little bit and get away, which I will be bringing my laptop for, because there's actually some work I have to do for the Boy Scouts. But yeah, I've got hobbies and I've got interests, and I've got a girlfriend, and she's awesome, and we have a cat that she likes a lot more than me. But that's how it goes.
Okay, makes sense. That's a great introduction. So you mentioned a couple of things that really interest me, which is the first thing that you love what you're doing, and I would love to get behind what is drive this passion. So is it like from your childhood, like from where this passion came from?
That's a deep question. So one of my biggest mentors in life is my uncle, my dad's brother. And one thing that he and I both have greatly in common that we have talked about over the years is that we both grew up very poor. And I know that that's a relative statement. I know that, in other places in the world, what we call poor is, luxury living.
Yeah.
But there was a great period of my childhood where, we slept in a car or a hotel or stuff like that. And we didn't know where our next meals were coming from, and that sort of mentality, I think, really deep underlying a lot of other ambitious behaviors I might exhibit, is really kind of what pushes me to like, come hell or high water, I'm going to make something work for my life and for my kid's life, and the people that I love around me. I think that's probably where a lot of the drive sort of stems from. And I think so the phrase that my uncle and I say to each other is, one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me was growing up poor, because it's really driven both of us. He's very driven, he's very successful in his line of work as well.
Makes sense. Okay, that's great. I also like sometimes you just need to frame the problem or the stuff in another way, in a positive way, and you will see something positive way in a positive mindset. Because what you call poor, this is what drive you to be able to become what you are right now. So it just sometimes it's just like how you can frame it and how you can get most of out of the situation. This is how you can make it so far. Because if you are just thinking, I am considered poor and I'm just being poor, I think you will be in the same place that you are into in this like at first. So just sometimes just how you are framing the situation or how you are utilizing that, it's like the thing that you mentioned is like a fuel for your passion. So this is what you're driving through all the stuff that you built and that you work on.
That makes me have so like, man, this is nice. I like talking about this stuff, actually. And I think probably to answer your first question, like what other things are involved in my life? These are the kinds of conversations I really enjoy having. There's so many things that come to mind when you say that. The framing. So there's a Bible verse, and it's translated in other languages and it's found in other texts too. But as a man thinks, or as a man thinketh in the King James Version, as a man thinks, so he is. So you are what you consider. There's this whole context of thinking I'm poor or whatever it is, I can fly, and like you think you can, and so you can, right? And I figured that out too. There's this great sense of like accepting the fate you're kind of given versus saying I'm greater than this. I feel a greatness inside of me, and I'm going to pursue and achieve what that is, and not let my circumstances around me kind of dictate who and what I'm supposed to be. So I think growing up in America, there's this great sense of like the American dream, and like making it to whatever degree of success that is for everybody. I think it's kind of different, but I think it always involves like having a lot of money, right? I think that everybody thinks if you're successful, you have a lot of money. And I think over the years, that definition's meant different things for me. I think that's naively, that's kind of what you would think. But no, I think spending time with the people that I love is a greater sign of success than having money. I think you need to kind of have money. You have to have your bills covered, right? So that you can do that. But you can spend time with people even if you're homeless, right? Like technically you can, maybe you have more time. And so there's varying differences of what success actually can be and how to achieve it.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's a great point. And also one of the things that I mentioned and also you agree on, which is how you are framing the stuff. For example, this mindset like got me, I got it from mostly from like a coding, because sometimes you are having a bug and if you don't solve it, there is no one to solve it. So right. You will sleep or maybe spend like a week off the computer, and when you just like go back, there is still the bug. So if you don't fix it, no one will do. So right. This is like sometimes this is one of the things that I love about the stuff that is like a software development or coding. It's like it's not just about the code. It's also like it's a mindset that you will develop with this code, and also how you are seeing the problem is like how you are seeing the bugs. So if you are solving a bug, it's similar to solving a problem in real life. If you don't solve it, if you don't make progress, if you don't do this, if you don't try it, iterate, try to like refactor it, it's similar concept that you can apply to real life. It's just like a matter of like the context and the environment. It's like the production versus the staging or development, but at the end, it's like this is how everything should work. I think this is one of the things that I love about coding, and also one of the things that I recommend people to learn coding, not just to get like a job or like to be good at coding, but just to develop this mindset of the problem solving mindset that you will have, that you will need at some point in your daily life, especially for someone who just like starting out in life and he's like a still like a child, for young people in general. I think the coding, it will be something that will be helpful, not only like career wise or in a professional career wise, but also in your personal life.
That's very interesting. And I wonder what the correlation is between people that are quote unquote senior developers or great developers, or really just that brings up another whole topic. But, the correlation between a good or great developer and how they actually operate problems in their personal lives. And that's something that I had struggled with different relationships as well, because I'm very much a problem solver. And sometimes women specifically, at least in my experience, they don't like just having the problem solved. They like to just be heard. And so that I have to, over years, many years, realize, okay, don't just solve the problem, which is so hard to do, right? Like that is so hard for a developer, maybe specifically, to not try to solve it. But that is the way to solve that problem. So I've had to trick my mind, I guess, to say the right way to solve this problem is to not solve the problem, which is, not intuitive, I guess. But and I think the other point that brings up is like, what is a senior developer? Just because you've been doing something a long time doesn't mean that you're a senior developer, right? I tell my son all the time, I know 60-year-old boys just because of the decisions they make in their life. Just because you're old doesn't mean you're a man, technically, right?
Yes. Yeah,
and on the other side of that, there's people that are 15-year-old that are men. Like they have the experience and the know-how to solve problems or whatever it is that defines in that culture, region, whatever, what a man is. And so I think the same thing could be applied back into development. You might have only been developing for a couple of years, but you're handling complex tasks and problem solving like a pro. Who cares if you've been doing it for 2 years? It's hard to put that in a resume, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is one of the things that is hard about, like, especially definition of someone who is like a developer, a senior developer versus, I would say, normal developer, or like I wouldn't say junior, but like for example, someone who like spent like 4 years working in a multiple startup or like a one startup that handle like a complex stuff. I wouldn't say like a something specific, but complex stuff. And someone working in a corporate job, like I would say something that is not really something that is difficult, just fixing bug here and there, and it's like spending the same amount of like a time. It's like a 4 years. Should I consider both of them senior? It will be hard because they are not exposed to the same problem. Also, they are not exposed to the same environment, because sometimes the environment and also how well you are exposed to challenges, this is how you can define that you are senior or not senior, not based only on the number of years as you mentioned, because it will be hard to be able to justify someone who like been in like a lot of complex stuff with someone who just like fixing some, I would say, simple bugs, or just having some technical support ticket here and there. Nothing like I would say complex that will be worth solving. So it will be hard to be able to like have the same badge as the other one.
With starting Native PHP, my LinkedIn blew up from like nobody following me to now I get all these followers every day are paying attention to the work I'm doing, which is awesome. It's an honor, to be honest. But every time I see them, it always pops up: senior developer, senior developer, senior developer, senior. And I probably for one of the first times in my life. So I've done a lot of hiring for other companies and stuff before, but usually things were kind of filtered a bit before they came to my desk, so that maybe we would get 1,000 resumes, but somebody was there in front of me to say these are the top 10 or whatever that you should look at. And they always said senior, but I think like now I can kind of see what maybe recruiters see a lot, or people that do a lot of hiring. Which has, and maybe a tip for just the listeners for your podcast, but if everybody's a senior developer, nobody's a senior developer. It's like if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority, right? If everything's an emergency, nothing is, because you can't. There's nothing to differentiate. So for me, like, going back into, if ever I'm going back into like the job market looking for another job, I don't think I'll put senior developer. I'll put something very catchy just to get the click, right? Because really what you're trying to do is draw attention to yourself. So I would put like, I don't know, just something like maybe opposite of what everybody would think, stupid developer or foolish developer, maybe, just to be like, wait, what? And then they, click and look into that a little bit more.
Yeah, makes sense.
I've made more mistakes than everybody else. That's probably a good way of putting things, because with mistakes that comes the opportunity to learn. So
That's great. I think this is a great point. And also, I would love currently to dive into your story. So I think we cover some good ground for like at the session. And I would love to get like currently we are talking about the native PHP product, which is currently PHP framework for building desktop and mobile application. It's currently you are a co-founder in this project, and we interview the other co-founder in the previous episode. So
Simon,
currently,
yeah.
I would love to get like the previous experience that you have been into before starting this project.
Yeah, that's interesting. So experience as far as work. I mean, I started, I think, with Laravel, I started 2013, and I guess we got some time. We can talk about some of these things, like how I got into development in the first place. Is kind of an interesting story.
Yes, I
My
would love
my
to.
dad was he was in the Navy in the 1970s, and he was a developer. And this is before they really had computers. He was on submarines, and he has a story that one of the he was the first crew of a certain submarine. It's the USS Jacksonville. And he would go out, and I was just a baby. I was not born in the 70s, but when I was just a baby, I remember him going out for like 10 months at a time on a submarine. And there's a story that he has. He was the computer programmer. Like not everybody knew anything about computers. The computers were very new back then. And so they actually were stuck in the water. They were underwater, and for whatever reason, the computer, they couldn't move because of the computer. And he stayed up for 5 days straight and worked on this problem. And he got an award for this, because he technically saved everybody's life, but he stayed up 5 days straight. He solved the bug, and they all survived because of it. And, like for me growing up, my dad, I remember, sitting on his leg at, 3 and 4 years old or whatever, playing like very primitive MS-DOS kind of games, like very primitive, like graphical kind of games. You hit the space bar, you type a command and jump. And so the guy would jump at the next thing, and, stuff like that. So I kind of grew up with that all my life. I guess my first career though was sales. I did door-to-door sales. And that came out of a need to like just want to make more than the minimum wage. Someone told me about it, and I started making more than I was making, washing dishes or something at a restaurant. And so that was, my early mid 20s. And I did that for like 10 years. I led teams. I would motivate a team I got really good at that and managing people. And I didn't like it, but I was good at it. So, if you're good at sales, people think that you should be a manager, which is kind of weird, because I'm really good at the sales side of it. I don't really like, I don't know how to tell somebody else to be more personable at the, in front of strangers. But so at one point I was actually living at my dad's house, and I was doing door-to-door sales, and I was using his truck, and I was on the way to this neighborhood to do door-to-door sales, and the head gasket in the truck blew, and I was furious. I was pissed. I didn't know what to do. It was very hard. It was commission only, so you only make money if you sell something. You can go out for a whole day and not make anything, right? Or several days, and that's happened before. And so he, at the time, he was a couple years into a new his own company, and he had a client in England or something like that in London, where they had a project where they were converting a program from C# to C++, or C++ to C#. And the head gasket blew. I'm pissed. I go back to home where he was at, and he was like, "Hey, can you copy and paste?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I can copy and paste." He's like, "All we need, there's a program running on the computer that every random time, about 15 minutes, they take a screenshot just to make sure we're doing the work. And all we need to do is copy it from one thing to another, because that's all that it requires for a while." So I did that and I did that and I did that. And at the end of the day, he gave me $400. And I was like, cool. Is this like an advance for the week? You know, I thought this is a whole week's pay or something. He's like, no, that's for the day. And I was like, whoa. And so for the next 2 years, my dad paid me a salary to basically start learning the ropes. And I always phrase it like I was able to gain my inheritance before my dad died, you know, because what he provided for me and my family, my future, was this environment that most people don't get. And a lot of people have asked me over the years, like, how do I start with development? And I think things have sped up, but I know initially it's like, you know, it takes a long time to really understand conceptually what you're doing. It took me a long time. It took me months at least, you know, and then that was just to like wrap my head around the concept, let alone be profitable or be an asset to a company or an individual that would pay me anything to do anything, because I had no idea what I was doing. So I kind of stumbled my way into it, but I was paid essentially, you know, I think $1,000 a week or something like that to pay my bills and work. And I didn't take it for granted. I know that other people in that situation or a similar situation might just sit back and just take the paycheck and not do anything. But I felt this like burn of, eventually this is going to run out. I need to do what I can with the time that I'm given so that I, you know, at some point can sustain myself. And I did that. It's exactly what happened too. The client that he had, the project ended. He had another client that went bankrupt. And so he lost funding and he was like, I can't pay you anymore. And I was like, that's okay. I'm going to build WordPress sites. And I think that's where I started, was WordPress themes and some plugins and stuff like that. And that's where I first got my taste of PHP, and things have grown from there. Obviously, that's the beginning, the origin story, I guess.
Yeah, makes sense. That's great. And at which year we are talking about, like, since you build the WordPress stuff, and from projects that you have been with your dad, and after that you have been working with WordPress and built them, at which time we are talking about?
So I worked with my dad for 2 years before I started doing, well, I started learning. So basically, like, one of the clients, the one that went bankrupt, he didn't actually get along with the guy running the company. Like, every time he would go there, they would get into an argument. And I'm like, let me take a crack at it, because I've got a sales experience. So I know how to like talk to people and address concerns. That work was being outsourced to China. And so I would go once a week to this guy's house. I would meet with him to say, look, this is all the updates from last week. What fixes do we need to make for next week? And I would relay that information and kind of project manage that with the guys that we had hired in China. And that's really, it was 1 day a week. I would drive like an hour to the guy's house and an hour home and spend 6 hours with him. And then every other day was only like a half an hour in the evenings when we had some overlap with China to go over the project and the details. So really, I had most of my days were free. And I started getting into like logos, a little bit of Photoshop, a lot of Illustrator. I prefer Illustrator just for whatever reason. Vector makes more sense to me than rasterize. Yeah, and then like learning CSS, HTML. And I went to, there was a website back in the day, I don't even know if it's still around, called thenewboston.com.
Yeah, it's a YouTube channel also.
Yeah, I think it wasn't before, but he converted a lot of those videos into YouTube over the years. I did look at it a few years ago when I was telling my son about it, but that was like just, and the thing was, the only other tool I had at my disposal at that time, my dad had a subscription to Pluralsight, and nothing against Pluralsight, but back then it was very dry, and I didn't understand even what they were talking. It was very difficult to understand, and I would like fall asleep literally watching these videos. I would put them on before bed just so I could fall asleep. But Bucky from the New Boston, he was very entertaining. He was like, look, we're gonna make a div. What is a div? Think of a div like a box. All right. And so let's think of it like a litter box. And what goes inside of a litter box? A cat. So he had like this class litter box, and inside of it was an ID of cat or whatever, you know.
Yeah, makes sense.
And like, it was entertaining for me to kind of wrap my head around that. So that's kind of how I started, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And then I realized at some point, like, I can stay kind of front end, but if I really want to make more money, I will have to learn some back-end technology. And WordPress, I guess, it just, to me, my dad's a .NET developer. He's like, we're not gonna do WordPress. And I was like, yeah, but I feel like this is kind of the future. This is like most of the internet uses this, or at least that was the phrase. And I think that's kind of true to some degree still. I think that the simple fact, like Microsoft, you need licensing, where with Linux boxes, you can run PHP and WordPress and you don't, kind of opens it up to being more accessible, which means there's going to be a lot of people and a lot of help that people will need around that. And I think that was kind of my drive to go towards the PHP path. And that's what I did.
Makes sense. That's great. I think that's gave me like a good understanding of the early days of web development. And also I have been working with the WordPress as early days. I couldn't remember exactly when, but I have been playing around with like a WordPress, PHP at my early days of learning development. It wasn't fun, to be honest.
It's popular to hate WordPress nowadays, so I choose to.
The problem is like it's the most, like they mentioned that it's the most hated technology, the PHP, and WordPress is one of the most used technology. It's like awkward, it's the most hated and the most used.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think that's a sign of success too. If you start getting haters, I mean, that means that you've done something that kind of disturbs the flow of things. So
that's true. I think PHP does have problem with developer experience, but not like in terms of like a business use case or like a business like a perspective. It's different.
Yeah, for sure. It's easy for people to go in and add a page and make some menu item appear or something like that. But to support that, it's a lot trickier. It's a lot more difficult on the back end of that.
That's true.
Plus all the bloat.
And one of the things that we like, I mentioned over the intro, you have been working on like other company, evaluation church, fast growing tree, Pfizer, which is the pharmaceutical company. Can you give us I would say an insight about all this company and how was the experience working there? And this is like one of the company that you work on. It's not all of them, but just I mentioned a couple of them.
Yeah, sure. So Elevation Church is it's one of the, I think it's top 10 in the world by like size, of the congregation. It's a mega church, if you want to call it that. I think it's in the top 10 in the United States or top 10 in the world, whatever it is. I worked there several years. I think 2017 I worked there. And that was a tricky job because it is a church, and that goes back into like faith and all that stuff and things that I believe. But then there were some issues that I had with like what they enforced and that kind of stuff. But as far as the tech goes, some of the really cool things that I was able to work on, my job was to make sure they do a live streams. This is way before COVID ever. Like, it wasn't popular. They were actually one of the first churches to do live streams. We would live stream 3 different channels. So there was the pastor had his own channel, the church had its own channel, and the band that played for the church had its own channel. And each one of them was streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Mm-hmm. I think at one point there was another one, but I can't remember what it was. But they were all streaming simultaneously. And so my team, our core function was to make sure the streams were up and running. We were answering questions. We were gathering analytics to report back. And so that's like 9. We had 9 Mac computers set up, monitoring all of these simultaneously to make sure that, everything was working smoothly, essentially. But in my, that was really just on Sundays. In my other spare time or the rest of the weeks, we had to work on a lot of different projects. But then there were some times that we could work on our own thing. One of the first things, and one of the things I'm most proud of, and the reason why I love putting that up there, what I like to talk about, they had this service that they were paying $100,000 a year for, that allowed them to live stream, but also they could chat with users. They could administrate some of that chat. So if somebody was saying something they shouldn't, they could ban them or block them or suspend, whatever. And so there were like different roles and managing that. Also, like the whole website would change at 9:00 on Sundays from this YouTube video of last week to the live stream, and chat would open. And so it was using WebSockets. And so Pusher was becoming really popular in the Laravel ecosystem. And I was a couple years into Vue.js, and I saw that they were spending this money, and I was looking at it, and I was like, I could build this thing. I could save you guys a bunch of money and just rebuild it. And they let me do it. And it took me about 7 months by myself to rebuild this whole experience for them. Just to get like a version 1 until they were actually using it, took 7 months, and there's a lot of work. And I look at the code, I go back to the website, and I can inspect the source, and I can see they're still using some of the work that I did, way back when. So that was really cool. That was a big win for me, I think, for my career, was to say that I single-handedly built this thing. And look at the functionality. It's emails, it's analytics, it's the chat, the WebSockets, it's, live streaming, and, all the headaches and problems that go into that. So that was pretty cool. Fast Growing Trees. So they are actually a local company, but they're local to me. So they're maybe a half hour from me, but they are very much a large national business. Their model is they have 40 something acres, at least they did when I was there, 40 acres of trees growing in planters in little pots, all different varieties of trees, all different sizes of trees. And they get an order, and they put the tree in a box, and they ship it across the country. And to me, like, I don't know, when I explain this to people, they're like, yeah, well, that's, trees, I guess. To me, it was wild. I was like, you actually put a tree in a box and ship it? Like, that didn't, I don't know. It's wild to me, They hired me. They had a site on Xcart, which I still don't really know anything about because I didn't really interface with it. But it's a PHP e-commerce sort of platform. Okay. And they use that to suck in orders, and they would spill it out to, they had a CRM or what's it called? Whatever, the central place to manage all of their orders, wherever it was coming from. And they wanted to migrate from Xcart over to Shopify. And so I helped them do all of that. I didn't build the actual site, but I did add like all the variants and I did all the data around Shopify. I interfaced with the API, the Shopify API, with Laravel. So we were able to, I was able to get the data from a database, which was, it was PHP 5.6 MS SQL database. And it was a nightmare, actually. It took me like a week or two just to get my environment set up. And they gave me a Windows computer, which I hated. And then I was like, I want a MacBook. And I'm like, oh, why didn't you say so in the first place? I was like, really? And they gave me a MacBook. But yeah, that was a huge undertaking, a big project. We got to brainstorm a lot of different ideas around building our own PIM, which is a product inventory management system, because what they had was not just a site. They had 2 Shopify sites. Plus they were selling on Etsy, Amazon, Walmart. And so they had the other really big problem around their business inherently was that if they have a tree that's out there growing, it might be a 3-foot thuya tree, but in 6 months, it's now a 4-foot thuya tree. And so they have to move inventory. The whole SKU changes, right? Which is crazy. The SKU didn't change. That was the rule that we defined. The SKU doesn't change, but the model changes. So like we had to, and then like we came up with ideas for like mapping out the fields with drones and having RFIDs on the drone and RFIDs on the thing to like collect data so we could actually in the morning fly. I came up with all these ideas and like started playing with it, like fly over the field and take inventory of things that we have in the field and report that back to. It was a lot of really interesting and a lot of interesting issues, problems, concerns, and solutions ultimately. So I got to think outside the box quite a bit. I think the other one you mentioned was Pfizer. Yes. No one's ever heard of that company. Who cares about Pfizer, right? Pfizer was...
Who wouldn't hear about Pfizer, right? Especially during COVID.
During COVID. And that's when I worked there. I worked there for 3 years during COVID. I was a COVID hire, quote unquote. that was yeah, it was interesting because I was hired as a Laravel developer, but the first 6 months I didn't touch Laravel at all. They stuck me on I forget what the name of this program was. They wanted me to research basically I can't remember what it's called, Red something I don't remember what it is. But it was a automation platform, essentially. So it would receive webhooks, payloads of data, and then based on that data, you could trigger any number combination of automations. So that was interesting. The other thing about that was like it needed to be containerized. It was all hosted AWS. And so getting that environment set up and established, and then having, with all their millions of different rules for security, like getting data properly to the right places in the staging environment and then a production environment eventually. And so there was a lot of challenges with that. I asked nicely if I could be moved from that specific thing because I missed Laravel so much. And I am like always kind of putting Laravel at the front of my career because that's what I've built my career on is Laravel. And to get away from it for so many months, I'm missing out on some of these new things that are developing with Laravel. So they put me on, I created this thing with one of my buddies I was working with for a couple of years. We called it Ticket Hub. Essentially, the team that I was on, we provisioned servers for internal facing Pfizer websites. So if you were in some department in Pfizer and you needed a site, and you would think there's like maybe, what do you got, 10 sites? There was thousands and thousands and thousands of not just like simple splash screens. These are like full architected, sometimes Laravel, sometimes not. Usually it was Laravel sites. And so we would take the requests from a department, we would spin up a repo, we would automate a lot of these things. That's what I was initially doing. Spin up a repo. We use like Ansible, YAML scripts, or CloudFormation to manage some of that stuff. But what they ended up moving me into was creating this ticket hub, which allowed, basically it was a seamless, one department might be using Zendesk, another department might be using Jira, another department might they just want an email sent to them, or maybe they get a text message or whatever when somebody has like support issues, right? So what we did was we created a Vue custom component that you could install on any site. You just installed some JavaScript in the head, and it would just absolutely position in the bottom right and had this very consistent experience no matter what site or what department you were on. And then the back end of that was a Laravel site where you could create, it was a form builder essentially. Okay. And so you could say, I want a text box, and this is an email, and this is the validation rules for it. And that got very elaborate very quickly, but that's ultimately what I spent the majority of my time working on there.
Interesting. I love one of the things that you mentioned, especially about the fast growing trees, like how you solve the problem of because like the usual, like for inventory it will be the same, but for trees especially it will be the longer they are in the inventory, the longer that they will get, and like they will like have a different form. So also you need to take that in consideration for the packaging, for the description of the product. So it's like a special case for e-commerce especially.
They were very much alive and living products, right? So
yes.
There was also, a lot of other things, like you could not ship certain trees or certain size trees to certain states, or if they did, they had to come from a different state. So we had holding facilities in some states so that we could ship to other states. I think one of the biggest challenges though was like, if I had 10 of a certain model of a tree, certain size and type, and I sold them all, I had to let Walmart, Amazon, the other website, Etsy, all know at the same time, right? Yes. So like having those coordinating all of that stuff together, that was very challenging to do, to have this central place. And so what we ended up with, I think the biggest thing was like have a buffer in case we know what's going to sell, what's not going to sell. They know the products very well. No one's going to come in and buy 1,000 marigolds, right? It just doesn't really happen. Not at our price point. Some people do that, but we're more retail priced. Or they were more retail priced. So there was always a buffer though. For every plant, we had a different buffer rate. So we would say, hey, there's only 9 left, but there was like 39 left, right? We had more just in case. And so once a day or a few times a day, we would update inventory throughout all of the different systems that we had. It was a very, very challenging and very unique company to work with, for sure.
Yeah,
It was fun.
That's great. And the next thing that I will be talking about is what is in your t-shirt and in your hat. There's an app for that, and the Native PHP logo. I would love to get your side of the story of how the Native PHP was founded, or like how did you meet with Simon, and how was the experience?
This is my favorite thing to talk about these days, so thank you for that. Yeah, there's an app for that. This is our logo. I don't remember who designed the logo. I think there's a man named Kaneko. I think he designed the original design for it. He leads all of the Laracon EUs. He does a bunch of other stuff too, but that's, I think, what he's most known for. I think he did the logo for us, the initial logo for us. And so I was like, let's get it on a hat, let's get it on a shirt. Yeah. I got stickers and, all sorts of stuff. Native PHP, I guess the timeline of that and what it is. So Native PHP, what is Native PHP? Native PHP, in a nutshell, is a way to build native apps, desktop and now mobile, with PHP. And I think you can consider it somewhat, as far as the mobile side is concerned. I don't have a lot of experience, honestly, with the desktop side. I came in with Android, and we'll talk about that in a second. The mobile side of it is, you can kind of think of it like Capacitor, if you're familiar with Capacitor.js, but it's using PHP instead of JavaScript, which, very opinionated here. PHP is a much more robust and less easy to break language than JavaScript. We've also adapted it completely for Laravel. So if you're a Laravel developer, you can literally just write a Laravel application, run a command, and deploy it to a phone. And in addition to just having a Laravel app on a phone, we've also created a custom extension for PHP, for our own builds of PHP, which that's inherently the issue, is getting PHP to work on these devices. The extensions allow us to call into Kotlin and Swift to run native functions on the device. So you can, anything that you can think is technically possible, just because we have a way to hook in to the device native functionality. So we can, anything your device can do, we can technically support that. So it opens up this whole world, right, of this whole unexplored potential. What's nice is, like, we have things like Capacitor and React Native and some of the ecosystem that they've built, because they've solved a lot of the problems for questions that we might have, like how do people like interfacing? Because they've adapted over the last 10 or 15 years. They've been doing things. So we can say, like, what's the current recent version of how people are interfacing with that? And we can just quickly adapt that now that we have our foot in the door, so to speak, of actually building apps. So the timeline of that, and that's kind of a whole story in and of itself, for me, from my perspective, I guess. So I was at Laracon US in 2019. That was the first time. That was in New York City. And then 2023, there was COVID. And then 2023, 2024. And I'm going again in a few weeks. And I'm very excited. I love Laracon. If you haven't gone to Laracon, or if you just haven't, just go. For so many years, I thought, I just don't belong in a place like that. Please go. Like, I was the guy that, like, I got kids, I've got bills, I've got this, I've got that. All these excuses why I shouldn't or can't go. I wish I would have just gone, because, if it's a money thing, you will make money by going to these. Not directly, but you will meet people that will, and just the inspiration of app ideas and stuff that you'll get just from the different talks, which I actually don't even really go for the talks, because they're going to be on YouTube anyway. I go to see now friends and colleagues and really just collaborate and being in that environment. It's like Silicon Valley, right? Like, everybody's driving towards, like, what's the next big thing, right? And then you get to find other people with that mindset. So I always make new friends every time I go, and my Twitter followers or X followers always increases every time I go, just because I like the the people around it. But 2023, Marcel Posiot had a talk from stage called Native PHP. I think that's what it was called, or building apps with PHP, something to that effect. And at the time, personally, this was June of 2023 or July of 23. I was actually waiting for back surgery, and I was in a lot of pain. People didn't really necessarily know that around me, but I had back surgery in November of 2023. I actually had a couple back surgeries before that, and I was really just wanting to get back to my hotel room and I also like dehydrated, had a migraine or something. Yeah. Like I was just in bad pain, but I saw this talk title and I was like, I got to stick around for this. And it was the second to last talk of the day. Right after that was Aaron Francis, and I left I didn't watch Aaron Francis because I couldn't do it. And I was glad I stuck around. What my thought was at the time was that they've cracked a way to run PHP on mobile, because when I hear native, I think mobile apps like React Native and native scripts and all that stuff. So I thought that we can now build mobile apps with PHP, with Laravel. It's a Laracon, so they must be talking about Laravel, right? That wasn't the case. It was really desktop apps, and that was really the extent of it. And Marcel was even asked at the end, like, what about mobile? And he's like, well, I've got a proof of concept in my pocket, but it's never going to work. And that's like, you can go back and watch the video. He's like, it's never going to work for all of these reasons for mobile. Number one, it's, the binaries are going to be way too big. No one wants to download a gig for an app, right? It's going to have to run a server. It's going to overheat the battery. It's going to, the processor. The battery's going to drain really fast, and the app stores aren't even going to allow it. So no, unfortunately, I don't think it's actually possible. And that's fine. I actually got very inspired by the desktop side of things, and I went home the next day and started a YouTube channel. So I have a YouTube channel. I haven't posted there in a while, but it's Laravel Online. So you can take a look at that, and you can see the first.
It will be in the show description.
Thanks for that. That's cool. I haven't been there in a long time.
It will be a good thing to be back right now.
I have posted some native PHP stuff on there, and I get a lot of views, and I get a lot of likes and a lot of comments and stuff. It's just I'm just so busy building everything right now. I do have to take some time and prioritize that a little bit more. But we also have a native PHP channel as well. So we're going through some of the thoughts for like where do we put some stuff and where do we grow more things, that kind of stuff. But I went home, and I think if you go to the channel, you'll see the first 8 or 9 or something videos is all native PHP desktop. And I had no good camera. I had no good mic. I just had a crappy 720p MacBook camera, but I was just so excited, check out what you can do, and I just went in and started building stuff. And I think the rest of the world followed along with me, because I think I was 1,000 or 1,500 subscribers the first week. This thing just came out, and I'm one of the first people to talk about it. I was like, cool. So I started building on that traction and started doing some other videos. I even did an interview with Dan Heron, which is the creator of Filament, and that was pretty cool too. I started doing some stuff. Then I had surgery, and I'm very open about this. And then I got divorced. So 3 weeks after I had back surgery, I was like, this isn't working. We already knew it was not working for whatever reason. Sold my house, and on January 1st, I moved into the place I'm in now, which is just a townhouse. And I spent 6 months on the couch, not really so much for the pain from the back surgery, because the back surgery was actually very, very successful. It's 1 in 1,000 have as good of a success that I had with this specific surgery, which is another whole topic. But
thanks, Scott.
I spent 6 months on the couch, kind of just trying to figure out what I really want to even do in my life. Do I want to develop? I think too, I had started and stopped so many other SaaS opportunities, SaaS projects, and I was just very much burnt out, and not just burnt out. I think I was burnt out for like 10 years, honestly. Like I just was done with like everything in life. I had this office, I had my computer set up, but I didn't even turn it on for like 4 months. You know, I didn't even like get on my computer. One of my friends who now works for Laravel, Jason Beggs, like February or March, he was like, "Hey, are you going to Laracon this year?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think so." And he's like, "Dude, you really should. Like, you're part of, you should go, you know?" And I bought a ticket, not knowing if I was going to go or if I wanted to go, but I bought a ticket and I just watched Breaking Bad, and like I just sat on the couch and just unplugged completely. And I'm glad that I did that. And if you go back and listen to Caleb Porzio's story about how he started Livewire, it was kind of a similar mindset, I think, where he quit the job he had. He didn't know what he was going to do. And then this whole idea of Livewire came about, and then Alpine came from that, and now Flux, and like it's been growing on itself. But he's built his whole life and livelihood around, you know, the fact that he had to just step away for a bit. And I wasn't intending to do that or to like start Native PHP with that. I just needed a break. I just needed to get away. I did go to Laracon. I was already kind of friends with Simon Hamp, who's my partner for Native PHP, and we just hit it off. We hit it off right off the bat. We just became like best friend. Like we just look at each other like, are we best friends now? Like, yeah, we're best friends now. And leaving Laracon, we both had this desire, and it was like this very strong drive to do something with each other, to do some sort of work with each other. We didn't know what it was or what it should be, but we liked being around each other. We still love being around each other. We just have a very similar energy and vibe. And it's like, you know, there's this like saying of like one horse can pull 2,000 pounds, but two horses can pull 10,000 pounds. And it's kind of that synergy that we have with each other. So we leave wanting to do something with each other, and we weren't sure what it was going to be. And we started a podcast together with a buddy that we met actually right before Laracon. I met this man, Stephen Fox. And so it's Shane, Simon, Stephen. There's 3 S's. S3, The Bucket. That's the name of the podcast, The Bucket.
Okay.
So that's where that came from, right? I came up with that, by the way.
That's great. That's a great name to like reflect.
I think so. So, you know, in some capacity, we were working with each other. We got to spend time once a week for a few hours talking about stuff. And there was other little projects that we had working on, and, you know, side projects and stuff like that. And I had asked him about Native PHP, about mobile a few times. And at Laracon, I hung out with Marcel quite a bit. We were staying at the same hotel. We Ubered a lot with each other. And, you know, I talked to him a lot about Herd. And I think I was trying to get a Herd Pro license for free, but I never got one. And I talked to him about, you know, Native PHP mobile, and he's just like, it's just not possible. It's just not possible for all the same reasons. He's like, I have it working on my phone, but this is the reasons why it can't ever be a real product. And so I was like, all right. And then I talked to Simon, and Simon's like, I think Marcel's wrong. I'm like, no, Marcel's a genius. You're the one that's wrong. There's no way. Well, Simon had said to us in between shows one day that one of his talks was accepted for Laracon EU, February of this year of 25. And I was like, wait a minute, what's the talk on, Simon? Simon, what is the talk? What are you going to talk about? Because I'm like, is it mobile? Is that? He's like, I got mobile working. I was like, what? No way. Like I just like shot through the roof with excitement, and I was like, no friggin' way. Like, I just very, very, very excited about it. And so I'm like, whatever you need, I want to be there to help you. If you need help going over your talk, your slides, your content, like, I want to test this thing out. Like, I want to see how this works. This is freaking awesome. You know, I was just very, very, very excited. I'm still very excited about the whole concept of it. And I think like a week or so before his talk, I asked a question that has completely changed my life. And I had no idea it was going to. I said, Simon, like we had discussed, like if it should be free, if it should be paid, if it whatever. And I was like, you're going to make something that other people are going to make a lot of money from. You should sell it. I convinced him like you should sell this. whatever price, I don't really know, but whatever makes sense for some people or whatever, right? And I asked him, I'm like, but if people are going to pay for this thing, you're only doing iOS. When are you going to work on Android? When's the Android side? Because that's by far a bigger audience. Yes. No business is going to pay you if they can only build iOS apps. They need to be able to do both. At the very least, like both have to be done, right? And he's like, I don't know, 6 months, a year. I mean, I've got all this other work I'm working on. iOS, I just started working on it, and I just don't, maybe a year or two. And for like 2 days, I had flashbacks because I inherently, like over the last couple of months of talking with him about how it kind of works under the hood, I understood the concepts of how he did things. And basically it's compiling PHP and into a C library. So PHP is written in C. Everyone thinks PHP is a language. It's not actually a language. It's kind of actually just a framework for C. That's why we can have access to, Wi-Fi or connection, internet connection, and some of these like low-level hardware questions that we can ask the OS, like what OS are you? Like, because it is C under the hood, you can very low level figure things out. So compiling PHP back into a C library, technically not difficult. Technically, it is actually, but you have to compile it for the environment, and that's something I didn't know. I learned later. Usually, it is compiled for Ubuntu, a Linux environment, or sometimes for Windows or something like that, so that it can operate in the same. You can ask the same kinds of questions at this low level. The nice thing is that iOS and Android both support C as a underlying low-level language, so you can actually. It's kind of relatively new. It's only in the last few years that Android's opened up their NDK that you can compile natively for the hardware itself. So PHP just works really well with that. JavaScript, you can't do that. Technically, you can't really do that. Everything that you do with JavaScript is through the web view, which we use a web view right now too, just because PHP likes to give back HTML. But there's other things that we can do around that that you can't do with JavaScript. And that's something we hope to get to in the future. But that's going a little bit more into the tech side of things, which I'm sure people like to talk about. I like to talk about and share some of that stuff too.
Sure. That's great to hear, like the back, like a behind the scene.
Man, I sat there for months. I think it took me 2 months to get a Hello World inside of an Android device. It was just I had no idea what I was doing. I asked AI a billion questions. I didn't understand what linkers were. I didn't understand like all of these different flags, what they mean and how to do stuff. And I'm still actually experimenting with different things on that. Just this last week, Simon, for iOS, it has to be statically compiled where I can do a shared embed. And what that means basically is like for a statically compiled library, everything is kind of like it's statically there. Everything that all the functions that you would call are all inside of the library. So the libraries are much larger for iOS. Whereas with Android, mine are dynamic. So I can have these libraries that are relatively small and load things dynamically when they're required. So the libraries are smaller in that case. So my baseline, just my libraries for Android are like 16.7 megabytes. Whereas iOS side, his are like 55 megabytes. Big difference when you're talking about you wanting to get smaller app size. So he figured out a way just this last week or 2 weeks ago. He's like, there was all these different things that he thought his scripts were taking out that they weren't taking out, like a lot of debug information and a lot of like comments and stuff like that actually bloat but aren't actually required in this build because no one ever actually looks at the PHP. You can't actually even see it when it's inside the device anyway. So he stripped his down from 55 to 22 megabytes, and I was like, holy cow. And I was like, I asked him, I was like, I wonder if I could do that with mine too. And he's like, no, man, you're already at 16 megabytes. There's no way. I got mine down to 7 megabytes. So now mine's way even smaller. I'm like, top that, dude, So we're still learning.
there.
Yeah, right. There is inherently, there's another one too. Like, so I've got support for the INTL extension in PHP. He still has to work on that, but INTL is Filament is a very popular, I guess it's a framework or like plugin or whatever for Laravel. That requires INTL because they do a lot of number formatter stuff, which uses INTL, which underneath that is another extension called ICU. It's the Internationalization Codex, Unicode, something like that. Yeah. ICU doesn't have any kind of package config or any way to like make file it easily. So it had to be compiled twice. And it took me, about a week to figure out how to get it. The problem is it adds about like 30 megabytes or something to the build. So now if you install native PHP for Android, it's going to ask you, do you want to install with or without ICU support? That's basically, are you going to do live filament or not? Anytime you use like the number facade with the format function, that's another thing that you're going to need INTL ICU for. So we wanted to make that optional. We didn't want to force people to have this bigger builds because if you're not using it, then you don't need it. And it could be a lighter weight thing. And we'll do the same thing when he's got it done for iOS. He's just got to find the time to do that. But so there I was asking back to the question.
That's great.
Asking about like what about Android? And he's like, no, man, it's going to be a couple of years. And for me, I've done SaaS startups projects before that ended up failing. And I think my drive for those was entrepreneurial solely. I wanted to make money and they never worked out for one reason or another. This is the first and the only time so far that I actually started a project with just the motivation of wanting to help my friend. I didn't think it would turn into anything more than, well, it's not that I didn't think it would or wouldn't actually. I did have a lot of high hopes for it. Actually, I saw a lot of opportunity in being able to do this, but my drive was like, he's so busy, he can't get to this. I need to do this. He's like, nobody else is doing anything about it. And I just dove in and I didn't even tell him about it. Over the next couple of weeks, I would ask him different questions of like, hey, did you have this extension? And what does your file size look like? And that kind of stuff. And at one point he was like, hey, are you like building the Android thing? And I was like, uh-huh. And he's like, are you trying to, right? He's like, are you going to compete with me? Or I was like, no, I want to contribute. I want to help. I want to, he's like, we should start a company. And we did. We started Bifrost Technology. And we've ever since then, my whole life's been totally different, since starting working on this thing. So there's a lot involved, after this. Yeah, it's a very much, my ADHD brain loves it because if I want to add like one new, location function to the library, I have to have like 7 projects open simultaneously for testing, for compiling the function PHP and then documenting everything. Like it's a lot involved with everything. So, and there's some really cool things we're working on too for the future that, just stay tuned to some of the stuff that we're working on right now. It's really exciting.
That's great. I think this is like a great thing because sometimes I always like have to have like the two side of the story. For example, for me, I have the host of the Syntax FM. I have the 2 hosts, and also one of the agents I have like the 2 co-founder. It's always like you will see different perspective of things for the same project. The same people that are working on it will have like a different background experience, how they are seeing things, which is I think what is make the projects unique. Because if we have the same mindset, if we have everything, I think it will not like move the needle so long. So I think having that diversity, and as you mentioned right now, Simon is working on the iOS and you are working on the Android, so it will move think a lot smoother, and maybe it will help. Not maybe it will help like the push the product in the right direction in the faster way, because currently maybe there is another one working on the same product, but they are working on the same thing but for iOS and Android. So currently you have an advantage to have like a someone helping you to achieve the thing that you are working on faster, and you can rely on, and they can help you with that, which is really great. So I think that's like the thing that is good about finding a good partner for our product, because this is like it will be the goal of that partnership. It's like to move the needle fast, and to make the products feel smoother, and the experience for the other people as well. So that's great. I think we covered some good ground for the product, and I would love to get two questions. So the first one, it will be some lesson or the thing that you learned along the way with building this product, and the second one, it will be ask after the answer.
Okay. So what's something I've learned tech wise? I'm learning stuff every single day. I'm learning so many things. That tech wise, that would be there's a lot of answers for that. I think like learning how to compile PHP, I think this is maybe something everybody's learning now too, is like how to incorporate AI effectively. I think one of the better questions I've asked AI was like, how do I optimize you for me? Right? Like, and it would tell you like, these are the right ways to go about things, right? Or some better ways to do it. And then you take that answer and you ask it again, right? So it's kind of like this iterative or reiterative or recursive way to like, I'm constantly getting AI better suited for me. And I've gone from like a couple months ago to like, we need to hire somebody to help with this, and this, to for a couple $100 a month, we can have AI do most of this for us. And it's, I think that's like a bad word to say to developers these days, especially when you're talking about not hiring somebody. But we have to be efficient for our customers more than anything. Like we have to put our customers first, and the responsibility we have to people that have paid us money, we owe that back to them to be very efficient, I feel, with the funds that we've garnished from them, right? So if AI is the right way to do that, we should explore that at the very least, because it is advancing every day or every hour. I feel I know like some people I've talked to, they were like, I tried AI a couple months ago and it wasn't doing what I'm like, yeah, but have you tried it since Tuesday? Because all of this stuff has happened. Like it's constantly very much changing and getting better. Yeah, and it's I neglected it almost completely for so long that I didn't have a baseline, and so I'm trying to catch up to like a baseline for integrating with it, integrating it into my life and into the projects and into things, and having it know and understand, the ultimate, like the big picture of things, and then microscopically as well, like some of the smaller things. So I think that's been like, that's an ongoing thing of, something I'm learning, is the right, when to use it, when not to use it, and to what effect and to what amount we should be using it. But I think like to have it do the majority of the work and then you're reviewing it, or even have it review itself with a different agent and then give you its summary. And then you've instead of like just doing all the work that could take you a week to do, you're having it give you, 10 different options or ways to build something that you're reviewing those different options, and you can really just think about the problem instead of how to implement it. If I have five arrays that I want to merge on a specific key and then order it by a certain thing, that could take me a couple hours to go through docs and try to figure it all out. Or I can just tell AI to do it, review it, have it write a test for itself, make sure that the test is passing what I want it to pass, and it's done in 5 minutes, right? Why would I not want to do that? Maybe that's just me trying to not feel guilty for using AI as much as I do. But again, I think it does go back to like, we have to be responsible with the project. And I think AI has a big role to play in that. What I've learned myself tech wise, again, the whole compiling PHP, Android, Kotlin, I'm not an Android developer. I don't know a lot about, like, there's a lot of different SDKs and Gradle versions, and there's things that I'm learning as I go along. And again, asking AI, like, why is this way and why is it this way? Well, how should I construct or organize the project to best handle all the different use cases and stuff like that? There's also some Android developers that I've known for a while that I send them code snippets to that they can look at and they can give me some direct feedback too. So that's also helpful to make sure that we're doing things, again, responsibly and in the right direction. That's what I've learned tech-wise. I think the biggest thing that I've learned with having a successful side project, we'll put it that way, is it's one thing to build something. It's a completely different thing to support the thing that you've built. I took a couple months to build out this whole implementation for Android. Supporting it is a lot more work. Yeah, having docs well constructed, having support channels for people that are having issues supported, knowing how to even just like offload some of that work to a certain person, especially now we're taking money and we're under an LLC. They have to sign documents that, and not just NDAs, but like, what if they take some of the work and do something else? What are they allowed to? How much has to be on our servers? How much does a lawyer cost to talk to about all that? Like, there's so many other things to support. There's one thing to just like build something, create something, but as a business owner, and I knew some of this to a certain extent, but when it was really just kind of me and Simon, we have a few contributors as well. Big shout out to Esser and oh my God, put me on the spot. I did it myself. Esser and Pete and Willem and Steven and Hassan. They've all contributed greatly, and they're doing a lot of the front work for us too, especially with the support stuff. They're in the Discord channels answering a lot of questions that I just would never have time to do any of the work if I was doing all that stuff. So having the infrastructure in place, I think that's since we stopped the early access pricing, that was very intentional timing for us to do that. So I don't know if you followed along with any of it at all, but it used to be like max $250 a year to get an unlimited number of licenses to distribute the app. Now it's $2,500 a year, because there's reasons for that. I still am justified in that pricing, because if you have a organization, you have 50 developers under you, or some like a large team, and they're all building apps, then $2,500 a year is not really much for unlimited on that. You can build as many apps, distribute as many apps as you want to for all of your clients that you want to. I can take one license and go find a client to build an app for them, and just one is $100 a year. So if you're not making $100 a year on a single license, then whatever. But the price went up and sales went down, which means we're not getting so many people coming in to support, which has given us a huge opportunity to go back and fill in the infrastructure for the company that we really need for the next phase of the whole project. And we are by far not done with where we're going, what we're doing. There's a new band that I really like, Sleep Token, and there's a phrase in one of their songs that says, "The gods that you thought were dying were just sharpening their blades." And so we've been kind of quiet the last month or so, but we are not taking it easy by any aspect. And the next big thing that everyone will know about within a month or two. It's a very, very large undertaking. It's very much going to help a lot of people see where the project's really ultimately going to end up going. And that's not even all of it. That's really like, we're already working on a phase 3 for everything as well too. So, stay tuned, stick around. We know that PHP is better than JavaScript. We're very opinionated about that. You might not be, but but I promise. I think that if you don't know that, I think that there's some underlying core that's maybe misplaced. There's some underlying, like, maybe you just think of PHP in a certain way that's one way to think about PHP, but it's not the only way to think about PHP. So I don't know. The face you made makes me want to ask you a question now.
Sure, go ahead.
So do you disagree? That's my first question. Do you think PHP is lesser than JavaScript?
I wouldn't frame it that way. So I will just give you a background of my technology that I've been working with. I have been using PHP for the last for the startup I was working with for 2 years and something like this. I have been mostly doing full stack JavaScript development, so Node.js on the back end and React and Vue.js on the front end. For me, I don't see that PHP is better than JavaScript or JavaScript is better than PHP, but there is a tool for the right job. I don't see it like that, but I see everything or every a problem have the right tool to solve it. So it's either a JavaScript or PHP. So I don't have a preference in terms of I do hate this one and do like this one. It's just a matter of finding the right thing for the right product. So this is for me.
I'll rephrase. I feel PHP is better than JavaScript for server-side technologies, which is what an Android and iOS device is. You can get away with some things with Node. There's clearly things that I can't do in a browser with PHP, right? Unless you're doing some of that weird, funky stuff that people like to do. What is that called? Where they're running I forget what it's called, the code inside the browser, which is kind of weird.
The server component?
No, I can't remember what it is.
Okay, no worries.
Maybe it is, but there's you can run C in the browser, or you can run C#.
The WebAssembly.
Yeah, WebAssembly. That's
yeah.
it. Yeah, so that's a little strange to me. Maybe it's great. I don't know, but I can use Livewire, but that's using JavaScript under the hood anyway, right? So yeah, there are clearly things that I cannot do on the front end with PHP, but I do believe PHP for the server-side technology is far superior just because, number one, it's been around a lot longer. Number two, it can actually talk directly to, in our case, we're talking directly to C. We're talking to the hardware directly from PHP. I don't think you can do that from JavaScript. It always has to be bridged through some other mechanism. So I'll give you that. I agree. There's the right tool for the right job. I'm not going to do a PHP alert package or some really cool. You can't do Ajax or asynchronous natively with PHP. You have to always kind of use some other threading mechanism for that. So I agree. I'll agree with you on that for sure.
It makes sense.
For the right job, you have to have the right tool. Yeah. I just feel like the right tool for building for both iOS and Android, PHP is more strongly suited because it can talk directly to the hardware.
Yeah, makes sense. Got the point. Yeah. No offensive.
Agree to disagree, or agree to agree. Yeah. No. I'm not like that anyway. So no problem. I like the questions.
The second question, I think, is also the last part of our the big a part of the episode. If we make a video of day in a life of Chain, what will be? This will be the question.
So that greatly differs depending on my day. Today I'm swamped with meetings and podcasts and doctor's appointments for summer camp and all that stuff, Tomorrow I've got a pretty light day. If I have nothing else really kind of going on, lately with the new project that we're working on, that I'm really just focused on this thing. I'm up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm up again around 7 or 8 in the morning. I should get an IV of coffee in my arm just because I'm completely. I know I look really old, but I'm only 19. No, I'm just kidding. It's because I don't sleep. This is a thing that I found though, that I thrive in that sort of environment. The reason I had the back surgery back in 2016 and then again in 2023 is because I work so hard. I have this, I just zone out and just focus on getting the thing done. And I'll end up working 100-hour weeks, doing that. to my own detriment. And I've had to figure out like a way to balance that. So I do try to, we have a membership to the gym, and I've been going to the gym. I have reminders now on my phone to make sure that I walk and I drink enough water and, all that kind of stuff. Because it's very difficult for me to pull myself away from the things that I'm working on when I'm working on it. When I feel like I have something accomplished or something to show or ready for distribution or whatever that is, I will take time away from, like when we came out with version 1 of Native PHP, I took some time, not really away from the product, but really more into like building the infrastructure. So I did take time away from the product and adding more libraries and stuff like that to the product, because we had to get other things ready for not just the next phase, but to really support this in a long-term fashion. So my day-to-day, I am constantly, this is like a brand new, it's not even a year old MacBook, and the battery life is already like, 4 hours or something, just because it's always plugged in and I'm always on it. I have to get that at some point updated. Hopefully they can do it quickly, or I just get another one, I guess. And I don't know, I have to figure that out. But I'm constantly problem solving. I'm finding problems. I'm solving them. I'm organizing the problems so that I can knock as many of them out in one swing that I can. Like I said, I'll have like 7 projects open up when I do anything to work on some of the native functionalities. So while I'm in there, I may as well do not just fix this one bug, but have a bunch lined up that I can go in and either fix bugs or add more functionality to it. So constantly, I have like 8 of these shirts. This is all I wear. Like I'm just Native PHP all the time. I feel like if like no one should be a bigger cheerleader, or no one should be a bigger advocate than the owners of the company, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I think like, and there's people that really, they're already building apps and putting it out to stores, and they're making money and doing stuff. And it's like, that's awesome. I can't let them be more excited than me. I have to be the most excited about this project, right? Because if they surpass us, then what does that say really about us, right? As far as the excitement goes. And so I've always got to be like thinking like the next best things. And we have a lot of plans. A lot of them we're already working on. A lot of things that are down the line a little bit more. But I'm really excited about the project, and I feel like there's several years of work ahead of me, which is why I'm up at 7 and up until 3 every day, because there's just so much work to do. So
makes sense.
Yeah, that's my day in the life of Shane. Yep.
That's great. So I think that will be it for today's episode. So thank you so much, Shane, for staying with us to be able to make this podcast. And for the last section, I would love to have you where people can find you online. So all the social media, all the link that you would love to share with us. I will be posting all the link that we mentioned over this episode on the show note. If you are listening or watching us from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Music. If you are watching us from YouTube, you will see that in the video description. So this will be your take, Sean.
Yeah. I have Blue Sky. I just, some habits die hard, I guess. And I'm always on X. So Shane D. Rosenthal, you could put a link in the
Yes.
show notes or whatever. And then that's pretty much, if you want to get my attention, that's probably the best place. We also have a Discord server for Native PHP, and I go in there at least once a day just to poke around and see what other people are building and doing. I get inspired by that. I like to answer some people's questions about Native PHP there. The link for that is it's at nativephp.com on our website. If you just scroll to the bottom, there's all of our social links are there. And yeah, I think nativephp.com, mobile, get a license. Even if it's just a personal license, $100 a year. If you're doing more than like one project at a time, there's a 10 pack for $750. You save a couple $100. Or if you're enterprise level or larger team, and we want to talk to people that are in that position. We want to support longer term. Like, what can we do for you? We've actually recently done a couple builds for some bigger organizations that have required us to add some functionality to the app, and we fast tracked that for them. So if there's something that this doesn't do and you're waiting for that, get a hold of us, because we want to support you. That's really what we're here for more than anything.
That's great. So thank you so much for mentioning all of that. And thank you so much for the time to spend with us for today's episode.
Elias, man, thank you so much. It's been great.
You're welcome.